What's up, people? We got Khalil and Ahmed here. We're gonna do a little Q&A. So, if you guys want to start off, you guys want to tell us a little bit about yourselves and how you got in the industry.
Sure, yeah. I'm Khalil. That's my brother Ahmed. We're the co-founders of Decoy Games. We started our journey to the industry. Honestly, we were playing games since we were like 3 or 4. My first game was Super Mario for the original NES. And, once we got to high school when we graduated, we knew we wanted to do something with gaming. So our first move from there, not without having really any direction, was to go and get our computer science degrees, because we just kind of figured computer science and gaming went side by side. And after we graduated from UMass, we found we didn't have as much game development experience as we thought we would. So we transferred right to YouTube University, started looking at self-help videos on how to make video games. And around that time, Unity was really taking off. And we started working on a game that we called SimSanity to teach ourselves over and over again. We do a lot of different iterations. Mm-hmm. And year after year, we'd use that game to practice and get better with our skills and build our brand. And a year ago, we actually ended up releasing that game. And that was the game that got us into the industry. That was like our big first commercial splash.
So what was your guys' did you want to answer to you, Ahmed, or?
Cover most of it, but yeah, when SimSanity released, we were able to release it on Xbox One, PS4, Steam, and Switch. So able to kind of go through the self-publishing route, and it just was a great experience. A lot of different things we learned, and met a lot of amazing people too.
So did you guys, since you, like you said, you did reiteration over and over and over again? So was that like feature creep, and then it took forever to release a game, or?
Like you said, we used that game to learn game development. So during that time, we also were working our 9-to-5s, which was at like a software sales job, which was nice and stable. So we just took our time. So it really was like this 8-year period. We were able to kind of complete a certain part of it. Then we're like, okay, we learned a lot of things. Let's start all over. And that way we felt like by the time we released, and we were trying to get on all the platforms, and that's one thing we want to talk about today. And that just allowed us to make the game we were able to do at the pace with the resources we had.
Right. So, and you guys self-published. Like, when did you decide to do that, and why did you decide to do that?
I think by around the time that we started making SimSanity was around like the Xbox Live Arcade time. So you had a lot of smaller studios and smaller games we made, like Castle Crashers and Super Meat Boy, and it was really just different from what we knew to be game development, where you saw a lot of just small studios making cool games, and they didn't always have like a huge publisher behind them. So when we saw that, we said, why not just take a shot ourselves, give ourselves the ability to really put our own idea and feel into the game, and also control our own brand, and and take it from there. So that was really what brought us through self-publishing, and also we started seeing opportunities come our way without the help of a big publisher. So we figured, why not just kind of finish out the ride the way we started.
Right. I remember a lot, like the $1 games, right? The $1 games. Yes.
Yeah.
And so I made a game with zombies in it, right? Do you remember that game? It was like a twin stick shooter, and it was on there. And I just saw that it got released on Steam, which is super cool. And it has really good music. And I actually animated on one of those $1 games. It was not the best game in the world, but it was cool. That's what the business model was the guy would pump out $1 games, bam, 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 bam. Yep. And that kind of went to the wayside, but you can still like play those games. But so lessons learned, so since you're self-publishing, that means you got to promote it. You got to do the PR. You got to manage the social media. Let's talk about lessons learned. Mm-hmm. Right. Man, and there we got Jay. We're talking about lessons learned, Jay. There he is. He'll come in here. No, go ahead. Lessons learned.
Oh, okay. I thought Jay was going to pop in and answer all the questions for us.
Yeah.
I didn't even hear the questions. I had to go get something to eat.
Yeah, so no, we are on. We talked about because they launched on Xbox One and all that stuff, and I was talking about the $1 games, and I was saying self-publishing, like you got to handle the PR, you got to handle the marketing, you got to handle all the social media. And it's like, if you've never done that before, it is a huge task, and a lot of people do it, but lessons learned, that's what we're talking about right now.
Yeah, man, there's a good amount of them. I think the first lesson, we learned was how important it was to build relationships especially with the like platform publishers, so Nintendo's, Xbox, and PlayStation, because they offer a pretty good amount of marketing options, but you need to make sure that you are in touch with them early and consistently, so you can hopefully plan something where they can give you some type of boost into the marketing. So there was a lot of options there. So that was one of the lessons learned, and making sure that we created that type of relationship with them and other partners.
All right, let's dive into that real quick, though.
Mm-hmm.
So coming out of the gate, day one, how did you go about even starting that relationship and then building on it?
Yeah, so we knew right away that there was no way that we'd be able to build those relationships from behind our computers. We got out to local indie groups and local shows and, PAXs and stuff like that. But we didn't just go to those places to show off our game and, get people to come play our game. We went there to build relationships, like Ahmed said. So when people came by, we would shake hands, we'd get to know them. When media came by, we would chase them down and be like, hey, you need to check this out.
Yeah.
If we were talking to someone and they did have some sort of a connection to a platform or something, we kept them. We sold our brand and we sold our product on the spot. And, even when the game wasn't ready back in the day, we did that with confidence, because we knew that confidence would sell that and build that network with those individuals. So it was a lot of honestly kind of creating those opportunities by chasing them a bit. And like I said, giving those people the confidence that we are, we're not going anywhere.
And I think just to add to that real quick, so we actually, our best showcases that built those relationships were actually the smaller ones. So It wasn't the PAX East, PAX West, EGX. It was actually more of small showcases like Boston Indie Festival Games or Game Devs of Color, or actually just like a demo night. And what we did is we checked who the sponsors were for the event. So sometimes ID at Xbox might sponsor a small event. If they send one person, then we have a much more intimate conversation with that person. So I recommend looking at the sponsors for a certain event. And then if it's small, it gives you a better opportunity to create that relationship.
That is very key. And I see so many developers and they're like, well, I have to get to GDC because that's where everybody is.
Right.
And it's like, well, yes. And that's the problem. That's where everybody is. So what's
funny is you bring up GDC, which actually is one that comes up a lot. And GDC is a great show, but it's exactly what it is. It's a game developer conference. You go there to meet other game developers for the most part. But you're not going to get a lot of especially if you're showcasing GDC, there's not a lot of media attention to GDC. There's not a lot of the platform guys aren't necessarily walking around at GDC. It's a great place to learn and build your skills and build a network for people to make games, but it's not necessarily a place that you go to build your brand, if that makes any sense.
And if y'all don't believe what Khalil just said, go look at the show floor plan for this year, last year, whenever. It ain't like E3. You don't have a hall that's like Sony, Microsoft, Nintendo.
No,
it's engine companies and ad monetization. And I go to E3 or ECTS, not ECTS. God, that's how old I am. That used to be a show.
Back when I was your age.
GDC. I don't remember the last time I actually went in the Moscone Center.
Nope.
Because
seriously.
All the publishers, all the platforms, they're in the hotel bars, hotel lobbies. That's where all of us do meetings.
Yeah. We have never been inside GDC. We last couple of times. Actually, the only time we went, we just flew down there and just met people outside in bars and looked for different off events or whatever. There was an ID at Xbox event or something else. So we just I same thing. You don't even have to go inside to get a pass to meet people.
And we made great connections there. Honestly, mm-hmm. We made great connections there by just booking a ticket and walking around the area and finding all the networking sessions and stuff around. All these people are worried about getting to GDC and getting inside the building. If you really want to experience, just go go and find out what's going on around GDC and shake hands and meet people.
I had a developer several years ago. They were like, I need some help with my plan for GDC. I'm going to go to the conference a day and then work on my game in the hotel room at night. And I went, no, you've got it exactly backwards.
Yeah.
You need to work on your game during the day and then get out and go network in the evening. And, the funny part about when you're at these shows is that you're going to meet people who aren't going to tell you who they are initially. We had a guy come up. I was hanging out with some friends when I was smoking. Random dude comes up and said, "Can I bum a smoke?" And we start talking, and it's like, "So what do you do?" And they kind of like hung their head, and they're like, "I'm at Apple."
Yeah.
Like, they know if they walk around with that on their badge, they're telling everybody that they're going to get swamped every 5 seconds by somebody wanting access to it. But yeah, it's one of those that you all, and that's the way it is with all events. You're going to have a better relationship building experience at a smaller event than you are at one of the bigger ones. So my question to you all then is, so over the last 2 years or last year and a half, and now going into 2022, we don't know if there's going to be more live conferences now or not. Anyway, how do you do that when you can't go to an event?
Well, I think, here's one of the answers here. I think Discord groups have been taking over that are almost these type of virtual experiences, including indie game business. I've been following quite a few. So it not only allows different events that happen like this one, but ones that are just open. I find groups when I just start asking questions or DMing people, and you just sort of, I'm always surprised every day how nice people are as far as just giving you their time sometimes. The worst thing you can do is like, no, I'm too busy. That's the worst answer. But we've had a lot of times we just reached out, maybe had a question or something. People are like, yeah, sure. I'll be like, hop on a quick call. They're like, yeah, sure. So yeah, use those Discord groups, forums, meetups. They're there. Definitely use them to network.
Yeah, I think the statement of like about not staying behind your computer is very figurative, right? I'll change it to like don't sit in Unity or Unreal, because you have to get outside your developer's hat and start reaching out to people. And honestly, today it's not that hard. And the worst thing you can get is a no. Go reach out to somebody on LinkedIn who works for a gaming company. Go, like Ahmed said, go to Discord groups. There's a lot of virtual events and stuff now, but you can't just go to those events and just sit behind your computer quietly, because you're going to know as many people as you did when you started as where you finish. All these people who are in Discord right now, reach out to some individuals, meet new people. That's how you grow your network. And, you never know who you're going to meet next. So it's a big deal. It's a big deal in the industry.
And as a perfect segue into this, today is actually the last gig meetup of the year. And so if you aren't familiar with the game industry gathering, it's a fantastic thing that the guy has put together, and he's going to be posting in our Discord shortly. We've got a special invite if you're not, because the gig is a curated, it's behind the velvet rope type thing. Like we talked about, they can contact trace assholes in their group. And so, but today, if you're one of the indie game business folks, you'll be able to get in and try it out. And that's exactly what it is. It's virtual networking, and it's amazing. All right. So back to the self-publishing part. You're working on the game on PC. How did you initially decide which consoles to even go to?
Yeah, it was casting a wide net. Like, it wasn't, we weren't in a position to say like, let's choose. So we're like, okay, our goal is always to be on consoles. So as Khalil said, we wanted to make sure our game was optimized as much as possible, but we wanted to try to make as much connections as possible. So we're like, okay, we saw the Xbox Live stuff. So that was like one where we felt like we wanted to focus on. And then PlayStation Indie started popping up, and also Nintendo kind of later. But as you said, it kind of just happened organically by just showing our faces at places. And the first one we were able to get under our belt was PlayStation. And it was a random conversation with a guy who was wearing shorts at the front of our booth at PAX. And I was talking to him for 40 minutes. And little did I know, he just new people at PlayStation, and he just was like, why aren't you guys on PlayStation yet? And I was like, I have no idea how to get on consoles, but that's our goal. And he's like, wait here for a second. He walks away, grabs this other guy, and he's like, this is account manager for PlayStation. Meet Ahmed. This is what so. And then we, boom, is right there. We signed a contract with them within a week. And then I never saw that guy in shorts again. I saw that he had a VIP badge, which I never seen in my life before at PAX East. So I was talking to someone really important, apparently. He was like dressed down, and like Jay said, don't assume who you're talking to. Just assume everyone can be important. But it was as simple as that. And then we found out at that point, it's a momentum. Like once you have one, it helps to be able to leverage that one to make a connection with another platform. But that's how it started for us.
I'll just add to that too. One thing that Ahmed was talking about is that we were never locked into one console. And I interact with a lot of indies and different like groups and stuff. And one thing that I've seen is that a lot of indies, before they even get a dev kit, they publicly announce like, this is going to be a Switch game, right? Which is fine to have that as your goal in the background. But when you're like putting that on your Kickstarter, like this is going to be a Switch game, when like a Microsoft representative comes across that game, they're like, oh, this is clearly he just wants this to be on Switch. He doesn't want this to be on Xbox or so and so for PlayStation. Don't lock yourself out of opportunities, right? Because if Xbox comes along, we're like, we want your game on our console, you better say, yes, we want to do that. Like, let's do it. Like, don't say, no, I'm a Switch game only. I only, no, take your opportunities. Like Ahmed said, it's momentum building. And the other consoles look at the other guys and build on that.
We acted like we were exclusive for each console to the actual because we were like, all right, what's the best thing we can get, right? So
we really want to be on the Zune. We are absolutely 100%.
We'll release here first, and
only thing we want to be on.
Exactly. And what happens is you have to keep the door open for all those things, because one of them will end up coming to you and say like, okay, well, are you releasing for us first or whatever? And then that way you keep it open until you see which one gives you kind of the best opportunity for like marketing. Because some things are like, well, we only do marketing for games that haven't announced that you're on something yet. And we didn't want to do that. Like, we want to keep that. And we surveyed like which ones could give us the best opportunity. And we ended up like lining them all up. And that's how we got into like the Nindy showcase. The one, and it was a good one, was the one with Cuphead, which was probably one of their biggest ones. And it was because we just like waited and we're like, okay, this feels like the best one. Let's announce we're on Nintendo Switch first before we announce on any other platform.
All right, so we got a question, and I'm going to ask it, and then I'm going to hide for a second because my dog is letting me know she wants in. So, Criticrops says, sorry if you answered it already, but what was your reason for choosing to self-publish, especially knowing you wanted to go to console?
Yeah, I think that, like we said, like the time that we were actually making the game was the Xbox Live Arcade days, where like the indies are really taking off. And, you know, being able to see a lot of these smaller studios make games like I said, Castle Crasher, Super Meat Boy, you know, indies were just kind of taking off on Xbox Live Arcade. It just gave us the belief that we could do it. And then as we started doing that, you know, once we saw the opportunities come in and also see us get closer to the end of our game without the help of a publisher, we just kind of stuck to our guns and said, you know, let's see this out the rest of the way. And and that's not to say there's anything wrong with using a publisher. It's just kind of where we took our current journey.
I'd say a second reason for that too is we actually like had a lot of focus on understanding the business side of the industry, and we wanted to understand what it meant to publish games, because that was something where it was like, if we grow, maybe we can be some type of publisher. So we wanted to go through that entire process and understand it end to end. What is it like to release a game on consoles? And now that we went through it, we felt like that gave us an advantage when if we wanted to decide to go with the publisher. Now we kind of know what it means and what they should be doing and what we should be doing as a developer. And it just allowed us to also create really good relationships with a lot of people in the industry, especially like the platforms itself. So it was just a path that we felt like was best for the future of our company.
So the next one comes from Neil, where what was the hardest part about getting the approval for your games on the consoles?
The approval, it's kind of just finding where these people are. I won't say which ones were harder to find for us, but some of them definitely took a little bit more work. Just because I think depending on where exactly you are, if you ever pay attention to like where indies are popular, there's always like a wave, right? So like right now, indies are very popular on the Switch, but not so much, like say on like PlayStation. But I also remember a time back when we were started where PlayStation was, the most popular for indies. And I think Nintendo wasn't really accepting any indies at all. And it really depends on like the demand that each console has for those indies. And I think it's worth being very aware to which consoles are more accepting at any given point.
Sorry, I'm still eating lunch. That is a wonderful point, because Nintendo in particular has done a complete 180 with the Switch compared to literally every other console that they put out, because it used to be the absolute, I mean, even AAA publishers didn't go to it that often, because it was just basically, we're making a console, its primary games are going to be our first party games, and we'll let some of y'all come play along, maybe possibly whenever. That has completely changed, and it's one of those things that we refer to as the cycles in the industry. It's like the consoles in particular, it never fails, and this goes back to the days that we had 3 consoles first launching. Whoever was the most successful in the previous generation was the most difficult pain in the ass to deal with
100%.
on the next generation. And you can look at every single one like this, and now, but along that wave, so now we have the same problem on Switch that we have on Steam. The fact that there are so many indie games on there, it's like, how in the hell do you make it stand out and you get found in all this? So, I mean, how have y'all approached that in terms of, there's so much, how do you attack the discoverability side of it?
Yeah, no, it's a great point. That's probably one of the hardest things on any platform at this point for an indie game. And kind of, as I said before, it's especially if you get on the consoles at that point, it's plain, they have people that you can talk to on every platform, and it's showing them your progress early, being in contact with them, just being take initiative and knowing like what's coming up. And things will pop up, and honestly, they might just do it because your game's good. They might do it because they like you. They might do it because it's just good timing. You just never know. And sometimes we get unlucky, and sometimes you get lucky. So that was just one of the things, is you do have to kind of think outside the box to make sure that you're in contact with them. And like we see, like ID at Xbox has a lot of different programs that actually highlight the games that are coming to their platform. Nintendo's now has, like, they had an Indies Direct, now they have the Indie World. They have different kind of areas where they like to focus on different things, and PlayStation definitely I think it's very selective what they do, so you have to kind of figure out when's good timing. So it's about just being forward and just trying to see what opportunities pop up, but also submitting to different showcases, like Guerrilla Collective's like a good one, like the Mix, other ones, like just try to see if you can get traction off those, and those also kind of help just bring up opportunities. But there's never just one good answer. It is all different things. Like, I'm not a social media guru either, because you can go viral and that can help too, but it's really trying to try everything and trying it early.
Yeah, and I'll say this too, is like, for those who haven't had their game approved to release or to be released on console, one big difference between making a console game in Steam is that when you go to release a game on Steam, no one's there to help you. It's just like you're kind of releasing the game out to the wild, and it does good or not depending on like what you've probably like manifested on your own. When you get console approval, you'll always either have like an account executive or like an executive group that are there for you to communicate. Now, if you do not reach out to these people and you just go through and release your game, you're going to get a very similar experience to Steam. But you are able to reach out to these people and ask them about any upcoming possible marketing opportunities, any chances for you to maybe like post your game on your social media pages. Some of them even have like a list of steps of like, if you do this, we will do this for you. And a lot of indies don't take advantage of that. So definitely take advantage of that. Obviously, there's a process of you also selling your game to them and convincing them that your game is worth marketing or your brand is worth marketing. But those channels are there for you to use, and you should definitely use those. And then I'll say, for marketing on a smaller scale, for people who maybe aren't at that point yet, one thing that we did is that we basically, like when it comes to podcasts or people who do streams, we didn't really say no to anyone, right? Aside from some people who maybe just had contact that wasn't overly flattering, but we didn't look at people's numbers and say no. because what we were doing is we were creating our own content. So if I have a podcaster who has 3 followers and he shares his stuff to those 3 followers, not only do his 3 followers now know about my game, but now I have a video of me talking online when someone searches Decoy Games that comes up. And, you know, week after week, month after month, now someone searches Decoy Games and they just see a list of results. They don't even have, people might not even like read or watch all these podcasts and streams. They just see, oh, wow, like people are talking about them. It could be 10 people with 3 followers each. It doesn't matter to them. Like they're just seeing these results come up with your name and with your game on it. And that's how you build a brand. It's kind of like that fake it till you make it approach. And eventually, like the bigger numbers will start to come in, you know, when, you know, the 10 follower guy sees a 3 follower guy, then the 50 follower, and it just keeps building up and growing and growing.
It is. And that's where we talked a little bit yesterday about press releases and what the hell is the point of press releases, because nobody reads them. And we all get this email every day from Game PR, whatever that's got 100 different press releases. But it's like you said, it's out there. And when you start doing, someone does a search or whatever, it pops up and it gives you legitimacy. You know, that's also another one of mine, like complete pet peeves and rants. It's why developers need to have a website and they need to stop using the damn Gmail address for an email. You have a website, you have an email URL, use it and build that, you know, perspective on it. From the marketing side, how have you positioned the game? What did you do different for console releases than you did for the Steam release? And did you do them all simultaneously or did you stagger them?
Our focus was definitely on the console side. And the reason was because we knew our limitations as a 2-man studio. Like we knew we didn't have a large following going into things. So our approach was like, let's lean on people who do have followings and not even be over consumed about, you know, what is our social media following and who's actually looking at us. We wanted to rely on people who had those numbers. So once we started making more genuine connections with a lot of people on the console side, our approach was, hey, if you can share our game on your social media and you guys get 1 million views, we don't care if we get 10 views on our side. We know that you guys are bringing the views in on yours. So that's why a lot of our marketing was console focused, because that's where the opportunities were for us. The Steam side of things wasn't as big from the marketing side on the console side, which is like I said, that's why our focus was more on Xbox, Nintendo, and Sony.
So what channels did you find work better than others? And so, you know, I'm not a social media guru. I have luckily people who help me with that. And we've seen over the last couple of days, people talking about TikTok for indie developers. And I would have not imagined that, but I mean, hell, whatever works. What has worked and what hasn't worked?
Yeah, I think for us, Twitter was pretty good in the sense of, like, you don't necessarily need a ton of followers. You just need the right people to see them retweet it. So, like, we have, I think we're at like maybe 1,500 followers on Twitter, which is nothing crazy. But we do have some key people that, like, if we get them to actually retweet, then it will like work, you know, it'll work well for us. So I like Twitter. But as you said, like TikTok, there's a lot of things that you can do. It's just whatever you feel works for you.
Yeah, I agree on the Twitter one for us. Twitter, YouTube was a big one for us. Things that are easy to share are really big. And then I do agree with the whole TikTok part of things. I would have never seen that growing, but I'm seeing more and more games promote their games through TikTok.
Sorry, my chair keeps sinking. The hydraulics in it are dying. And so it's just, I keep doing this. All right, clue me in. What in the hell do you put on TikTok as an indie developer to get traction?
Yeah, I think the thing with TikTok is it just like their system gains off interaction. So the more people who look at your stuff, the more people they end up sharing it to. So TikTok wasn't big when we started, we'll be honest with you. So that wasn't a big part of our marketing, but I am seeing it more and more nowadays. And it's just kind of like that, you know, the idea of a video that just kind of quickly plays itself and you know it's going to be over in a minute. People are more likely to like sit and engage with that versus a YouTube video that says like 28 minutes possibly of like a gameplay video. They're less likely to sit down, press play, and watch that till the end. So I think TikTok has this weird addictive nature of like, you know, keep swiping and watching these short videos that works really well for like game trailers and stuff.
So do you all manage this internally, or do you have how much of your day or your week actually goes to social media and marketing versus the actual work on the game?
During release, it took a large chunk of it for sure. It depends on the periods. So like as we were heading to release and through like post release, it definitely took a larger chunk. And then I think once we were handling like post release bugs and stuff, I'd say it was like 50-50. Now that we're a year out, probably it's far more on the lesser side. But I think if you're heading into release for your game, especially like that 3 months before period and 3 months after period, be prepared to either do a lot of social media or marketing management on your side, or get someone on board to help you with it if you do have a lot of development to work on.
So post content launch, I mean, that's obviously a huge part of keeping that longevity of the long tail of your sales going on. Was that different on console versus on Steam, or was one console better than the other? How did you approach that part?
Yeah, I mean, for one, just technically, when releasing builds on consoles, it's a much heavier process than on Steam. So people probably heard about certification process, and that doesn't just end on releasing the first game. No matter if you're talking about updates or DLC, it's definitely it can be an intensive process if you're not kind of ready for it and have it planned. But for us, we had our post-release plan was two things. One, we had some DLC we wanted to get released, but one fallback plan that we had was Games with Gold on Xbox, and that was something we pursued to have prior to release. So we basically talked to them and we're like, hey, if there any way we can, what is actually, we asked about Game Pass. That was the first thing. And then what ended up coming out of that was us being able to get on Games with Gold, which we're like, okay, if we're able to get on Games with Gold after release, then that's a good like fallback plan. Then we can have something there. We know we'll get the users at that point, at least we assume. And then that would help us kind of release DLC during that period. So that was like our ultimate fallback plan, as this was our first time. It gave us some comfort. It went really well, almost like too well, because we also were not prepared for that many users to come on at one time. So obviously we had like online issues and all this stuff. It's just a much different experience, but it's great to experience that. But now with all the things going on with like Games of Gold, Game Pass, and other opportunities, definitely see how those opportunities might be able to help as far as post-release. Like it's a good way to use a strategy for that too.
All right, well, let's dive into that real quick. So what happens when you get successful, and how did you handle that? What were the issues that came in, and what happened?
Yeah, so every time we talk about SimSanity, we always talk about it as a learning experience, which I think in that it being a learning experience is a huge success for us, as we gained so much. So something like Ahmed's talking about with Games with Gold, there's nothing that you can prepare for that. Like when Microsoft puts a game on Games for Gold, you're one of 3 individuals, and you can get upwards of 1 million users in a month, and your servers can get overloaded in a way that there's no way you had it testing, especially for a small studio like us who didn't have the means of doing like large, QA server testing. It was just certain things that we've never seen before. But like, again, we took it as a learning experience. There are certain things that we ran into development wise and marketing wise that, I would approach it completely different the next time around. So I guess I say that just to let everyone know, be prepared to learn. You're going to go through certain things that I can tell you about today, and I can warn you about 10 times over, and you're not going to understand it until it actually hits you and it slaps you in the face, and you're going to rub it off the next morning and be like, all right, I'm ready to go. But yeah, there's a lot of things that definitely hit us, that was the only way we were going to be able to learn through them.
But Khalil, everything is like on AWS and it's automatically scalable. And why didn't it work? What happened?
We always tell a funny joke about one of the funny issues went through certification. Again, we never had the means of doing like large QA testing, and we had a very specific error that only occurred on Xbox if the 2 players were playing on India servers. and we like failed. We failed our certification because of that. And they're like, you guys need to fix this and find out what's going on. Which, by the way, to recreate that, as a reminder, we need to have 2 people playing Xbox on India servers. And it's like, what are we supposed to do? And we're sitting there like, guys, can you help us out with something? Can you guys get some resources out for us? Like, we do not have the means to handle this. But it's kind of like funny stories like that weren't as funny when they were happening, but we can go back and laugh about them now. But
how did you deal with that? I mean, we always talk about that UPS commercial several years ago, and it had the little company, and they're like, we sold one, and then it's like, and they're like, oh shit. So how do 2 guys from the US who run an indie studio with no QA and testing, facility fix a bug that happens in India?
Yeah, I think so. So what happened was, and this not even just that much, like, because we didn't have 4 people readily available to even do online testing. Our game's a 4-player online game, so even to do like the simplest tests, I looking back at it, I definitely would have like had a company like go and actually do it. But for the India one, we just had to keep testing as many cases as possible until we felt like, okay, maybe this is what they're running into. So, I mean, we never got people in India, obviously, to help us, and we asked. Yeah. But we're like, okay, let me just keep testing 4 players and try all these cases. And eventually we found like a certain location bug that was coming from like our third-party server that was not like it was like we took like a latitude and longitude number, and it was like weird because a certain number messed it up, and it was like, okay, maybe this is it. And I that was like my area of the coding, so I always told Khalil, I'm like, I think this is it, and then it's like failed. It's like, I think this is it. It was like 4 times we had to try, and then when it finally came back, we're like, passed. We're like, thank you.
Yeah, and we're not net code developers or anything like that. These were all things completely new to us, but you can imagine how helpless you feel sometimes in these situations. And that's one of the challenges with consoles, especially since everything's behind NDA. So like you can only talk to people who work behind NDA, which like severely shrinks the network of people you can work with. I'm not trying to scare everyone out of console development. It's very rewarding, but I'm just like, these are certain things that can be a little bit.
Khalil's over there cold calling New Delhi going, if you got an Xbox, damn it.
Yeah, but I mean, but I mean, we were contacting Xbox, and we're like, can you guys give us people, and again, this was during like COVID, so there were just resources in general were tight, so we felt for them, and it was a tough situation, but
our meeting room looked crazy because I had like Nintendo like dev kits, like 4 of them lined up, and I'm like pressing each one. It just looked like a whole server room of just testing, queuing, and all. I would have absolutely, like, looking back, I would have absolutely paid probably a decent price for some like testing QA studio to do, because it was just a ridiculous assumption for us to be able to do it with 2 people using a game like that. It wasn't a smart decision. But
do not underestimate QA testing is one of the biggest lessons for us.
It's not something that you need to point out to scare people, but it's something that people need to be definitely aware of.
Yeah,
it's like lot checks are at Nintendo. They give you some crazy ass situations. It's like, well, if you jumped in the 3rd pipe on level 2, 3 of Mario and your dog bit the screen at the same time the power went out, does it crash?
Yeah.
And you just have to test it. You have to be ready for it, because here's the shitty thing that people don't know. If there's 80 different things they're testing and you pass 79 of them and fail once,
that's what I was about to say. Yeah,
you fail everything.
There's no A minuses. There's no
only A plus. Yeah, only 100s on tests. That's it. That's the only thing that gets passed.
Yeah, I forgot who we were talking to yesterday, but we were joking around about it, and we know that we were frustrated because I think we were hanging on one bug for a solid like 4 weeks or so. That they kept rejecting back to us, and they're like, no, you have to 100% test it. And when I say I'm not pointing to any specific console, I just want to say that as well. But they kept saying that there was one bug that, we're hanging on, like, they're like, every game passes with 100% pass completion. We're like, that's impossible. Well, like, we know like a lot of AAA games are getting waivers on different things, but we're like, okay, we get it. We'll have to 100% pass it. But yes, you have to pass every single bug.
Unless you're EA.
Unless you're EA.
Unless you're like Cyberpunk, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's like we know this shit and legit because that, So, all right, be aware. It says, "What's a good plan to publish your games? What is essential to have the approval by console companies, and what you should avoid? Plus, what are some errors that you made that you'd fix for the next one?"
Yeah, I think just in general, a good plan is the kind of the dates and scheduling. And actually, the cool thing about, I forgot which one exactly, but one of the platforms actually laid out a nice like scheduling plan for when you should start thinking about marketing, think about release. And you'd be surprised, but you should probably give about 6 to 8 months, like after you're done developing your game, to like start your publishing plan. Like obviously people think like developing up to the last minute, it's like releasing next week. That is a huge mistake. Like you should be like done with your game, and I really like done with your game, and then probably 6 to 8 months planning to release. And it's like and that's a plan every studio tries to do at least, and it really is the best way to do it. And I know it might sound ridiculous, but because you need to give yourself time to because there's some opportunities they're not even going to give you unless you pass certification, which we didn't find that out till later. So like getting your game pass certification, like if you now pass certification and now you get to start marketing, like now you're like in control. Like you really are. Like if you're in that position, man, you'll probably get on the Nindy showcase and the Xbox thing and all that. Cause like you're certified, you're good, game's complete. They know it's coming out. Like you're in the driver's seat. But what happens is obviously budgets, time crunch, that like all that stuff we understand. But if you really want to plan right, that's how to be like a power seat as an indie. It's like have a plan after that. I know it's not an easy thing because we don't have like money flowing in to keep us like alive in that part. That's like the ultimate goal.
We have no money, so let's postpone our launch by 6 months while we plan this out, and then we'll figure it out at that point.
I'd also add don't announce release dates until preferably until you pass certification. That was like one of our areas. Not that it's a huge deal now, but there's like don't be like, my game's coming out March 7th, 2023, and you don't even know where you are in development or certification. Just wait until you're 100% sure and then plan ahead. It just looks better, and you're not gonna have as many people be like, why isn't it out? Why isn't it out yet? Like that's one of the worst questions you can get when you're like under fire.
Use coming soon as long as you can, and then ease yourself into a year, and then ease yourself into a quarter or time or season, and then month and day.
Coming soon with a question mark. No, I'm just kidding.
The good news for indie teams is the reality of marketing that existed even 5 years ago doesn't exist now, where you need to start marketing 6 months in advance. This isn't to say you shouldn't start community building and you shouldn't be talking about your game, but it's much more acceptable to even do a release announcement 30 days before it goes than it used to be. So it's a balancing act. It's like, yes, you need to be early on telling people that this game exists, but you can get away with not doing the heavy-handed, full-bore marketing until a little closer to launch. Ideally, when you're actually going to launch. All right, I got a question from Facebook. Do you feel it's possible to start building valuable relationships with console platforms before you have much to show off, especially in the indie space where many people don't have a library or portfolio?
I mean, it's possible. It's not going to be. It's always easier if you have something to show, right? Like that networking is always value based, right? Like you come to the table and you're like, "Hey, this is what I have," and another person's like, "Hey, this is what I have," and you try to find a way to put it together. Now, maybe what you have is just a very genuine personality, and you're making like personal connections with individuals that you've met along the way, and that does go a long way. So I'm not belittling that, but I think you do yourself a lot more favors if you build your value so that you bring something to the table to make yourself memorable while you are building those networks.
Another thing to keep in mind is something to show can literally be something as simple as, a GIF and a tweet, because we start monitoring this for our publisher clients. We start monitoring this for a variety of things that we do over here on the consulting side. And it can literally start with, oh my God, we saw, I'm always talking about how awesome Pitchy Game is, but we saw something on Pitchy Game, and this is something we need to keep an eye on, and we'll note it, on a spreadsheet or in our CRM somewhere. It's like, keep an eye out for this. The other thing that I will extremely emphasize to developers is, do not ignore opportunities that come to you. Yep. Even if you're not ready to talk to a publisher, if one reaches out, don't just ignore them and blow them off because you don't know what that's going to turn into.
I agree. Right. Yeah, for sure.
So if you did have to go back and do something completely different, what would it be?
Go, Khalil.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's like always the cheesy answer, but like I said, some Sandies was a learning experience. So I'm glad we did the things the way that we did, because from my point of view, that was our best way to learn the lessons that we did and put ourselves in the position that we are now. And I'm also aware that like the way this works isn't like hitting a home run right out the bat. Like we understand that, and that's at any phase of development. So I'm glad we made the mistakes we did. I'm glad we hit the successes that we did along the way, because I don't think that we'd be where we are today without those mistakes.
Yeah, I know. I agree. Maybe it's just our personality, but here's the honest truth is one amazing thing that happened after we kind of went through those experiences, which we shared, was soon after we found out that big publishers, trusted ones, the one that worked well, they didn't really care as much how many copies we sold. They were just amazed at the fact we released the game on all platforms. So we were in like an extremely strong position after we released, and we had all these publishers like, what are you guys working on next? Let us know. Like, let's talk. So we end up now, we're in a position that we felt was going to take us like another 5 to 8 years maybe to be in. And we're hiring up to a team of 15. We're funded. We're ready to go for our next game. And we're taking a publishing route now because we're just building a much bigger game. And me and Khalil can't do this on our own. But if we didn't do it the ways that we did it before and tried all these platforms and did all these things, and now we know our mistakes, I don't think we would be in the position we're in now. So I have no regrets on all the things and great things that happen and the mistakes that happen.
You don't learn anything when you do it right.
Right. It's true.
All right. So here's my question. I mean, this is always the one that burns in the back of my head. How do you make a company work for this long when you are working with your brother?
Yeah, I think that here's the thing. Like, me and my brother have done everything together since we were young. So even whether it's like good times or bad times, we have that trust with each other that like we'll still be here the next day, right? Like I'm still going to be his brother tomorrow, regardless of if Decoy Games goes under fire tomorrow.
Can't lose me.
Yeah, so it's like it's that level of trust that sometimes, and I know I'm probably speaking the truth for a lot of indies, that you don't know when you are teaming up with someone that maybe you just met a year ago, or maybe a friend that you met at a game jam. We felt like we had that chemistry of knowing how to work with each other, how to push each other's buttons, each other's strengths and weaknesses. Like there was no questions there. So the question for us was just like, what's the next thing we have to accomplish together? So I think for us, it was really the trust that helped for sure.
Yeah, it was a blessing.
Nobody's bringing up like the old girlfriend that the other one stole when they were in high school. And it's like, yes, I do. I trust you. I trust that you're the same dumbass that did this when we were 15. Yes. It's, for sure. My wife has famously told me, I love what you do. I support what you do. I will never work with you. And it's just like, and that's perfectly fine because I can't do what she does, and we get along great like that. So here's your opportunity. We got about 5 more minutes before we're going to dive into our next one. Are you looking for a publisher right now?
Yeah, so we actually, like kind of said, we just announced that we're hiring. So we're making like our dream game, which we didn't think we'd be in a position to do so. So we did secure a publisher for that game. And we're just really excited with the publisher and what like the amount of creativity we have and this level of being able to kind of take our time and build the game we want to build. So yeah, we secured our publisher. We actually just opened up job postings last couple weeks ago. So if you're interested in working for Decoy Games, promise the coolest video game company you ever worked for. It's all remote jobs. And we go to decoygames.com/jobs.
I just posted it for you. It's everywhere now.
There you go. You got Unity developers, 3D artists, concept artists, tech artists. We're hiring a whole gamut, so definitely apply. And we're also not really a company that's like, you need to release 5 published games on AAA levels in order to apply. No, we're not really like that at all. We love looking at portfolios and seeing just what you do. We want passionate people, so definitely apply.
One of the points that you brought up earlier is it's absolutely key, and a lot of developers don't realize the significance of simply having something shipped.
Yes.
Doesn't matter if it was on itch or if it was on Steam and sold 4 copies. The fact that you have wrapped development on a game, shipped it to people in a state that was playable, is a huge deal. And I don't want any developer out there not taking that seriously, because it really and truly is. And to be able to do that, self-publishing your first game on consoles as well, you two are in the top 5%. I mean, it's not something that a lot of people can pull off, or even try to pull off. So part of it is y'all are getting crazy for even doing it in the first place, but you did it, and that's something to be commended.
Thank you. Appreciate that. For sure.
All right. And so if y'all have any other questions about self-publishing and dealing with consoles and going to all that, the guys are in the Discord, and you are. I haven't even checked it today. They are in the Discord. And so we've got the post-session chat in there. It's always great. No, wait, where are y'all physically?
Boston, Massachusetts based. So we're near Boston.
Okay. So you actually have there is actually a community around there, so y'all can go out and do small events when it's happening and that sort of stuff. Let's pretend you're not for a second. What resources and what places do you use to find some of these smaller shows and get-togethers that you mentioned early on?
It sounds crazy, but we literally used to just search indie game meetups near us, right? And the first ones that came up right away were things we didn't even know about. Was Boston Festival of Indie Gaming, and then Playcrafting were two of them. And both of those, brought up really awesome opportunities for us. And then when we went to Playcrafting, because they had a branch in New York, and we went to one of the shows in New York, so we started searching, local indie shows in New York. That's when we found Game Devs of Color. And then we just kind of started searching around, and there are little communities and meetup groups all over the place. And then, like Ahmed was bringing up at the very beginning of the show, a lot of these groups also have sponsors. So like one of these groups might be sponsored by Microsoft or might be sponsored by Nintendo, which typically means that they will have some form of representation when they do hold meetups. So yeah, just search around, and even virtual groups work as well. But again, it's not just a matter of joining the group and clicking join and then meet people, like shake hands, say hi to people. Hey, I'm so-and-so. I'm an aspiring artist and I want to do this. Like, you have to do that extra step of, it's going to be awkward at first if you're not used to it. And maybe it's not, that'd be great. But, coding was awkward to me when I started too. And, that's just how new things go. So just go out and try.
And don't assume that people aren't there because you don't see them. There are a lot of people lurking around everywhere in all of these groups, because from the publisher side we have to know what's going on as well, and we have to be able to see and pick new things that are coming out. All right, so next up, I have to look. Like I said, folks, it's day 3 and my brain is shutting down. We've got this is a perfect segue. We have an indie publisher Q&A panel coming up. So here we've been asking questions from the developer side of indie publishing, and in just a few minutes we'll be right back, and we're going to be talking to the publisher side of indie publishing. So Khalil, Ahmed, thank you for coming on. Really appreciate it. And, you know, as a testament to the ability of networking, that's how we actually got you in the conference.
Yeah.
Recommendation from someone else. So
Sure.
thank you immensely for doing it. And if y'all ever need anything or you need to come back or you're ready to do another postmortem, you're always welcome.
Sure.
To everybody else out there, just stick around for about a minute and then we'll be right back with our next session.
Thanks
Thanks everybody.
Thank you.